Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 4 of a 2024 virtual summer school series, Program Development Through the Lens of Access and Belonging. And we're excited to have you all joining us today. Thanks to those who have been on each day. And if you're just joining us, we're excited to have you. My name is Emily Smith. I'm a program associate in the Community, Professional, and Economic Development Unit at the University of Arkansas System, Division of Agriculture, Cooperative Extension Service. Virtual Summer School is co-hosted annually by the Southern Region Program Leaders Network, Program and Staff Development Committee, and with the National Association of Extension Program and Staff Development Professionals. And I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to everyone on those committees, and especially the members of the Virtual Summer School Committee for making this all possible this year. Today's session is entitled Leveraging an Asset-Based Approach to Community Building, Program Delivery, and Community Engagement. But before we dive in, I just want to remind everyone that we will be using the Zoom Q&A feature and utilizing that throughout the session. If you have questions for our presenter, please post the questions in the Q&A throughout the session. There will be opportunities for chat engagement as well, but if you have questions, those should go in the Q&A section of the Zoom. I also want to introduce and thank two of our Virtual Summer School Committee facilitators for helping today. Bethany Cleveland, thank you so much. She'll be managing the chat. And Dr. Armenta Lockhart, who will be moderating our Q&A. And now it is my honor to introduce our speaker. Dr. Hunter Goodman is the Assistant Professor for Community Workforce and Economic Development for the University of Arkansas System, Division of Agriculture, Cooperative Extension Service. Hunter focuses primarily on building capacity through an asset-based community development lens, particularly in the areas of nonprofit, workforce, community leadership, all for local development and resiliency. She believes strongly in the power of people within the community, along with associations, organizations, and institutions to create vital, vibrant places to live and thrive. And so we are really in for a treat today. And before I hand it over to Hunter, I wanted to share a little bit about the session. So today's session is going to be interactive in the chat, and Hunter is going to facilitate a thoughtful conversation where you all will gain an understanding of asset-based community development, also referred to as ABCD with an acronym, through an extension lens and how it can be used to impact inclusive community building and participation in our programs. She will also share an example of how ABCD has been used through the grant-funded USDA NIFA program here at the University of Arkansas with 6 counties. And so it is my pleasure to introduce and hand it over to Dr. Hunter Goodman for her presentation today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Emily. It is an honor and a pleasure to be a part of the presentation today, but really part of this series. I've had the opportunity to listen in several times this week, and it has been a phenomenal series. So congratulations to all who have played a part. As we get started, there is a poll that is coming up for you, and I would like for you to just take a quick minute and complete that poll. So first of all, in your work with an extension, what does community engagement mean to you? And if you would choose one of the options there, either use it to inform community members about your work, consult with community members about your work, involve community members, collaborate, or empower. And however you define that, we'll go over that in a little more detail as we get into the presentation. Okay, wonderful. So we've got some mixed responses. It looks like involve is in the lead, and collaborating as a second. So that's terrific. Thank you so much for completing the survey, the poll, and I think that will be a theme throughout this presentation. So as we get started, I want us to think about a couple things about the goals for this session. So first of all, what are you in for over the next little bit? And so first of all is an interactive, thoughtful conversation. We're going to do our best to be interactive amidst a presentation style. So there will be multiple ways to be involved. We will cover an understanding of asset-based community development, what it is and why it works for extension in my view. We'll give an example of asset-based community development in extension. We'll look at content that you can apply in your work and in your community, and then we'll do some questions and takeaways. So that's kind of what you can expect today. And in this, the way that I present, I believe that we come to this conversation as people, both as professionals, but also we are people. We are neighbors, we are friends, we are daughters and brothers and sons and sisters, and all the things that we are in our lives. So we bring all of that to the table. We have diverse ways of understanding, and that's a good thing. We trust we have the skills to accomplish great things. Together, we are interdependent and we draw on each other's ideas. And then, of course, we take care of ourselves however we need to do that. And as you participate today, I want you to think about 3 different ways to participate. The first is discussion, and there will be some cues throughout, as well as some of the leaders here on the line that will facilitate some of that chat. I do ask that you grab a sheet of paper and that you take notes. There will be several opportunities throughout the presentation for you to reflect and you to answer questions on your own. And then after the presentation, and I understand that time is tight for all of us, we're extension professionals, it's the joy of the work, but to take a few minutes just to reflect, because that's where it's gonna all kind of pull together in terms of how you apply what you're learning into your own work and into your community. So as we think about that again today, you're a professional, you're bringing your personal self, and you're a neighbor and community member. So you're everything today in this conversation. So coming back to that poll that it was in the beginning, I want to draw our attention. Thank you, Samantha. I think that poll, looking back at that and kind of how everybody scored and how everyone looked at how they define their engagement work, their community engaged work. Thank you for the poll. We can take that off. I think when we look at the overall, this is actually the community engagement spectrum as it is defined from informing, in involving all the way to empowering. And you see that there's 5 different definitions here. And so I did not give you the definition in the beginning intentionally to see how we would all do it. But as we think about this a public participation spectrum developed by the International Association of Public Participation from 2014, Inform is really providing community with information and assisting and understanding problems, alternatives, and solutions. It's that providing information. The consulting is where we obtain community feedback on analysis and alternatives and decision making. That involve is where we really work with the community and consistently consider their concerns and their aspirations. We collaborate, it's when we truly partner with community in decision-making, including in identification of solutions. And empowerment is where community are making decisions and they're leading solution-based efforts. So I want you to think about that as a context today as we move through the conversation, because wherever you are in extension and whatever you're doing, we're engaging, right? We're engaging our community. We are about our communities. And so let's think about how we're doing that and how we could do that in a way. We're all in different places. So think about what that means for you and for your extension as we go through today. So as I move forward, I'm going to talk about what's called asset-based community development. And you may be thinking, okay, I'm not a community developer. I'm in a different part of extension. Well, guess what? We all are community developers, and community development, community engagement is a part of everything we do, in my view. I think where we draw from that, if we look at some of the things I'm going to talk about, you'll see some resources here that are on the slides, and they're great places to draw information. They're also in some of the resource information, I think, that'll be in follow-up. So as we think about this, I want to give a few working definitions, because you're thinking, okay, like, where is she getting this stuff? Like, where's the context? And if we think about it, first of all, there's lots of different definitions of leadership out there. I posit to us today that the best test of a leader, in the words of Robert Greenleaf, is, do those grow as persons? Do they become healthier, wiser, freer, and more autonomous, and more likely themselves to become leaders? So if we think about what we're doing in extension, aren't we trying to create more leaders? Whether through our communities, our 4-H, our family consumer sciences, our agriculture, natural resources, wherever we find ourselves, right? We're trying to grow more leaders. And so as we think about that, this is a definition that's actually in the Abundant Community by Dr. John McKnight and Peter Block, that I use a lot in the, Just kidding. Wait, I'm going backwards, people. My slides are not cooperating. All right, here we go. So a great community creates conditions where people can fall in love. It's a place where we can make a fuss about one another, and a place where we can ask, how did I ever live without you? I guess if you're in one of my presentations, I don't want you to go to sleep. So I'm like flipping the slides, right? Keeping everyone on task. So when we think about this, like this is a great community where people can fall in love with the place. I mean, who wants to live there? Who wants to work there? I can see all the virtual hands, right? So like that's a place we want to be. And we want to be somewhere where people care about us, not just because we work there, but because we're people. And we make the place a better way, better place, better opportunity for ourselves and for others around us. And so this is the for discussion. You got the preview of coming attractions quickly there, but the for discussion. So queuing up a little bit of chat. So I want you to think about and answer this question. So as a leader in Extension, how do you understand community opportunities? So I think we're going to open up the chat. Is that correct? So this, I will turn it over to my colleague. I don't want to dominate. If my colleague would so gladly read the comments, if you would go ahead and put your answers in the chat. So if you think about how do you understand community opportunities, you want to get a sense as an Extension professional, what's going on in the community? What does that look like? And how do you go about that? So Bethany, if you could read those to me as they come in.
Okay, sure. So someone said, hold on, they're coming in kind of fast. Let's see. So through qualitative and quantitative methods, needs assessment, what's desired already there. Somebody said just talk to people, build relationships, make sure that they're constantly checking in with community members, demographics, again, connecting with community, knowing what's already offered. So kind of that needs assessment. Yep. So a lot of talking to the community, interacting with the community, advisory board meetings.
Outstanding.
Focus groups. Yeah. Those kinds of comments. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Outstanding. So those are all great ways to really make sure that you understand what's happening. And it's really, there's a core theme in all of those that's people. So whether it's focus groups, somebody said relationships, it's about putting people in the center. And I would go a little further and say, how do you understand diverse community opportunities? How do you make sure everyone in the community has an opportunity and feels included in Extension? I'll just pause at that. That's food for thought. So as we move forward, I want to talk a little bit about asset-based community development as a lens. So think of it as a broad stroke approach to how we might engage our communities or how we might deepen our engagement with our communities. So first of all, asset-based community development is not new. It was it emerged from a growing critique of a needs-based or a problem-solving approach. It has really putting individuals and communities, thinking of individuals and communities as having assets and capacities, having things that really bring everyone having a gift and a strength to the table. And asset-based community development emerged in 1988 is when the Dr. Jody Krutzman and Dr. John McKnight, who with the DePaul Institute, asset-based community development at DePaul University, but back in 1988 with Northwestern University, when they really coined that term and the research around it, it's actually a concept that has been around for a long, long time. And if you think about globally in our communities and cultures, our tribal communities, really, how do we build on people? How do we connect people? How do we build on what's strong and not what's wrong is a global concept. So it is certainly from a research-based perspective, sort of asset-based community development. But if you think of it broadly, it is something that's present in a lot of communities across the globe. And so it places community at the center of local decision-making. It activates individual and community participation. It builds on community leadership. and it strengthens local connections and relationships. So asset-based community development is really about, you do think about needs, you absolutely think about needs, but you still get to the needs. You look at it from a positive, strengths-based perspective and putting community at the center of decision-making and at the center of community action. So I want to put this up here for you. And to be clear, I'm not saying it's an either or. So when we think about an asset-based community development approach, oftentimes in our communities, there are grant-based funding programs in our communities as a whole. There's often what's called a social service model that's at play, where there's a focus on needs. We tend to respond to problems. We look at things from a charity orientation. We put an emphasis on agencies. We focus on individuals, and we look at it as service. We're providing a service. Power comes from our credentials, and programs tend to be the way we go about things, and we look at people as clients. Whereas an asset-based community development approach focuses on the assets and the gifts in the community, builds from a place of opportunity, looks at it as investment, puts an emphasis on relationships of two or more people working together in what's called associations, focuses on community, has a goal of self-determined communities. So it's about the community leading that empower piece back to our spectrum. Power comes from relationships. People are the answer and people are citizens. So it's not either or, it's both and sometimes it can go back and forth. But if we look at things in extension from an asset-based community development approach, we really think about the assets and the opportunity. We look at opportunities to invest alongside our community members. Okay, how are we doing? I'm going to assume, I'm looking out in the virtual audience here in Imagination World, that I want to move now into thinking about something through the Asset-Based Community Development Institute that's part of their teaching, which is that every single person has 5 habits or 5 gifts or 5 strengths. So if you think about your community, your extension, your team, every single person has 5 strengths. We have a lot more than that, but 5 for sure. And I want you to think about these 5. Heads up, this is a moment for notes and reflection. So if you think about these 5 gifts, and this comes out of the ABCD Institute, so giving full credit to my ABCD Institute colleagues and fellow stewards, that if you think about the gifts here, the first one that everybody in your team or your community can offer is a gift of the head. We all know things: leadership, governance, grant writing, art, history. That's stuff that we've learned somewhere along the way, and we all have that we can give. The second is the gift of the hand. And the gifts of the hand are the things that we do. Could be cooking or art, writing. I'm not as gifted in the cooking, but I can write, right? So like gift of the hand. Gift of the heart are the things that we care deeply about, like maybe our kids, or the environment, or sustainability, or healthcare. It's the thing we would do no matter what because we just care that much about it. There's the gift of the heel, which is the things that we do to stay grounded, like walking or biking or writing or journaling. And there's the gift of human connection, which are the things we do to stay connected in my community, maybe being part of a group or visiting someone. So these are all gifts that every single person has, everybody. So I invite you to take a minute, take your sheet of paper, and I want you to do the first 3. If you get to number 4 and number 5, bonus points. But numbers 1, 2, and 3, head, hands, and heart. If you think about your gift of the head, what is the thing you think you know and you can give to the world or to the community or to extension? The gift of the hands, the things you might do with your hands, and the gifts of the heart, the things you care deeply about. So I'm just going to pause for a minute, let you jot those things down. Okay, so extension, silence can feel like an eternity on PowerPoint. So hold that thought, write that down, keep that thing. Okay, we're going to come back to it. I think the point of doing something like this is actually these are not the kinds of conversations generally that we have with members of our community. Maybe we do. And if you do, that's terrific. But a lot of times these are not the kinds of questions that would just walk up and talk to somebody or that we would have in a training or a conversation. But these are the kinds of things that if we understand people in our community and people in our teams and what's really important to them or what they feel like they're really good at or what they feel like they know, we're going to be able to engage them in deeper ways than I need you to do X by Friday, or I need this, or I need that, or we need this, or whatever. It's a different way of thinking about someone, of what they, to credit Dr. John McKnight, what do they know so deeply? What do they want to learn? And what do they want to teach? Everyone can do that. And these are the ways to draw that out. So this is just one of the tools of asset-based community development that you can use in your extension. It's an easy way of conversation and discussion to think differently about how we might engage folks. And we'll come back to that when we get into our Arkansas example. So I want to ask you how you engage your community members. So some of you said this already in the earlier question about how do you engage your community members? And some of you said focus groups and discussions and 101s, and that's terrific. And that's exactly, you're going to see some themes of that here in just a minute. As we think about how do we engage our community members in strategic decision-making, I want to give credit to my colleague, Dr. Angela McCauley. And Angela actually presented these slides in another way and has allowed me to use them. I mean, this is a way to think about sometimes in extension and in our communities and other ways, we might have a traditional process where we are the question, we come up with a question and we ask our community. So if you think about these triangles, the top triangle might be the extension professional. The bottom triangles might be the community members or team members we're trying to elicit information from. That's a very traditional model of how we engage. If we used asset-based community development of really empowering people from where they are, we might be on the outside and our community members are together around a round table or the like with some markers and pens and a white sheet of butcher paper on the table, creating and really writing and drawing what they're hearing. You ask questions, but you're not sitting there literally asking the questions. You give the questions to your community members in this type of structure, and you let the imagination, creativity flow, and you discover things about your community that otherwise in a different setting, the answers might be different. If we think about what is not a process for ABCD, this would be it, where we sit at the table amongst our community members and we're still listening, so people are telling us what they think we want to hear. When we truly step outside and provide these opportunities to listen, is when we get a different kind of engagement and impact. So I want you for a minute, again, go back to your notes. You had your gifts. Now, what is the best way to understand your community? And by this, I mean, you know your community. Wherever you are in the country, we're from all over the country today. Wherever you are, rural, urban, micro, whatever you are, micropolitan, metropolitan, what is the best way to understand your community? I'm going to pause again for a minute. What is the best way for you, based on where you are, what your culture is, what that looks like for you? What is the best way for you to understand your community? Okay, so keep it coming. Keep it coming. We're going to come back and we're going to open it up here in a few minutes for some conversation via chat. So as you're hearing, as we're thinking about some of the next steps, want you to think about what makes sense for your community. If you were to think about an asset-based community development approach or deepening wherever you are in those 5 places on the community engagement spectrum, what's the best way for you? In preview of coming attractions, that's part of your discussion question. So as we think about the asset mapping, I wanted to use, we talked about the 5 gifts a minute ago. Asset mapping is another tool that you can use with asset-based community development. Asset mapping can be done in a couple of different ways. Often in extension, it's quite common for extension professionals to use this diagram from Flora and Flora, and it's community capitals from the perspective of those core assets or things in the community. When you think about the culture, the financial perspective in the community, the political capital, the social capital, which is the relationships and the connections, the built capital, which is both natural and physical, from parks and rivers and streams to buildings and museums and libraries. You think about the human capital of the individual and what strengths they bring, the natural, just kidding, preview coming attractions, those natural things, and then back to the culture. Those are very common in extension, and those are great ways to look at what your community looks like. These 6 are ways that the Asset-Based Community Development Institute often uses. And I honestly, as an extension professional, I use both. So when I'm using, often with extension professionals or in a setting, academics or others or practitioners, I might use the community capitals. If I'm using this in a community context where some of this might be new, or that this might resonate differently, sometimes I use these. So you could use either one. But basically, when you think about the assets to connect, first of all, you think about the individuals, the skills, the talents, and the gifts of people in the community. I look around at my squares today of my fellow University of Arkansas colleagues. There's so many things I could say about their individual skills, talents, and gifts. The things like that head, heart, and hand that you identified, that's where you put that stuff. So I want you to take your mind to a room with lots of flip charts, sticky walls, if you rather, whatever works for you. But you've got big sheets of paper on the wall, and you have people in a space write down the individual skills, talents, and gifts that they have in their community. And they put it post-it note by post-it note on that big wall of paper. And then you go to the associations and you ask people to think about the places where 2 or more people gather. And it could be McDonald's for a cup of coffee. It could be, not your name McDonald's, but you're going to think maybe the local Bunko Club. Or maybe you think about the professional associations and extension. Or you think about those places that 2 or more people come together. And you put it on your sticky, put it on your wall. Your institutions. Institutions are the things like think of your nonprofit organizations, your higher ed institutions, your hospitals, your institutions, your organizations are in there. Again, stickies, wall. What are those things, those institutions in the community? Then you're going to go to physical assets. You're going to help people think about everything from natural resources to built resources. What are the things in their community, in their extension team, in their whatever you're doing this with? What are those things that they have to work with, whether it's a park or whether it's a building or whether it's a festival? Old festival, that's a tricky one. And then economic assets. Think of stickies wall, okay? Economic assets. Economic assets are the things that like your businesses, your things where exchange of money takes place. And then stickies, wall, and events and traditions. That's culture. What are those things? Festivals, farmers markets. Think about all the things extension does alone that create traditions in the community. Arama, those things that are really important to who we are, those things would go there. Okay, how are we doing? Do we have our room with all of the different things around it? We have the sticky walls. Now, I want you to look around the room, mental room here, mind you, and you're going to start to connect. So you go to individuals and you say, what's a skill or gift here that might connect with this association, and something on that association sheet, and something on the institutions, and something of the physical, the economic, and the cultural. And you begin pulling together connections that otherwise might be hard to see. And so if you think about the primary purpose of something like this is to reveal and uncover our community's strength. It's to think about those things that we might know about our community, or we think we know, but when you write it down and you put it up like that, somehow it just looks different. And you could see things from a different lens than you might otherwise be able to see it. And other people definitely can see it from another lens. It helps you develop a sense of action and pride. And when I say community here, community in every way I use the word community in this presentation can be both external community and internal. It's the community of people around you that you are serving and supporting and leading and working alongside and working with. It is that community, however you define that, by doing something like this and really using an ABC lens, it develops a sense of action and community pride. It also provides real data for imagining action that community has the power to make. So it gives you some stuff, right? Some real things that you can pull from that's data for imagining what would happen if you connect some of these pieces and think about it in a different kind of way. And it also allows people, if you do this process in an open forum or with a smaller group or in a church that maybe isn't participating with Extension, or a particular population of your community that isn't participating with Extension, you're going to get data you haven't seen before. And ways of thinking, it's somewhat less threatening to do this in a room of sticky notes than it is to sit around with a group with a particular person and share this information one-on-one. And then to guide future relationship building, because people start to think and connect in different kind of ways. And it gives even more ways for shared understanding and shared work together. And asset mapping is not an action step. Sometimes I hear folks say asset mapping and asset-based community development is interchangeable. Asset mapping is a tool of asset-based community development. It is not asset-based community development on its own. And it's not that there's no one right way. You can take many different forms for asset mapping. At the end of the day, it's about a way to listen and engage. So I would not be a good community development professional if I didn't, of course, pause here for the community development principles of good practice. I realize we're coming from all different aspects of Extension, but if we think about community development principles, these are some of the core ones. This is through the Community Development Society, and it's co-learning, collaboration, community-driven practice, community power, dignity within diversity and within who we are, economic autonomy, social justice, and sustainability. And I'll leave you to the definitions to read more thoroughly. Those words are more than words. They're the principles of the work in community development. And I think they can be carried through to the work that we do as Extension in lots of different ways. So I'll pause there. Okay, I'm going to move to an example. I'm going to talk a little bit about an example in Arkansas that we've used. So in Extension in Arkansas, we have actually used asset-based community development as a way to engage our community. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that here in a second. So Arkansas, USA, if you haven't been to Arkansas, please come visit us. We'd love to have you. And when we think about Arkansas, this is where Arkansas is located. Our Extension office is located in Little Rock, which is outlined there with the little star. And for purposes of this project that I'm about to talk about, we worked with 6 counties, and you see those 6 counties in red. That's Pope County, that's Hot Spring County, Clark County, Hempstead County, Mississippi County, and Phillips County. all are tremendous places in our state. And I want to zero in on Hope, Arkansas. Hope, Arkansas, some of you may have heard of it as the birthplace of Bill Clinton. It's also the home of one of the Watermelon Festival in Arkansas. And it is also the location of one of our places where we've used this model. And so when you think of this particular model I'm about to talk about, we partnered with our family consumer sciences team, our health team at the University of Arkansas Extension. They had a health and safety, rural health and safety education grant, which we partnered, and we'd had a previous grant in the past and found that the volunteers who were part of the program did great things while they were in the program. And then after the program ended, there wasn't the same incentive to continue. And so as we looked at this opportunity to work around health outcomes in 6 counties, we particularly focused on using an asset-based community development model for recruitment of community volunteers. So 5 volunteers in each of those 6 counties, 30 volunteers went through an asset-based community development model themselves, a longer version of what you've had today. And then they also learned public health best practices. And through using both of those things, they've developed programs that amplify and broaden the reach of county extension agents in these 6 rural counties. And these are just some of the objectives that how we've used that. The reason I share this with you today is because it's a way to use ABCD as a lens. This particular program has used, it's really about health. It's health and well-being in the 6 target counties with a focus on using an asset-based community development lens as a way to engage and think about how those 5 volunteers can, in each of the 6 counties, can target on those communities they know. So if they're working with a church, they're working with their local neighborhood, they're part of a school, they recruit additional volunteers, they teach and train health and wellness in those areas. So Extension is able to reach pockets in those counties that they haven't otherwise been able to reach. And it's bringing people to the table that haven't otherwise participated. And there was a guideline that we had in all of these counties that of their 5 volunteers, 3 needed to be new volunteers, 2 could be existing volunteers. So asking our local offices to engage additional folks and be intentional about that. So I want to come back. I want to come back to this, and I want to come back to the community engagement spectrum. As you think about this spectrum and kind of where you are, so looking back at your notes, looking at ways that you inform or you consult, you involve, you collaborate, and you empower, and where you are on this spectrum, how you could use asset-based community development in this process. I pose that same question to you, but in a different kind of way. And this is a reflection question for you in your notes. Wherever you find yourself on the spectrum, where do you want to be? So do you want, we assume everyone wants to move forward. That's going to be a guiding assumption. But like, where is that, right? Like, where and how do you want to move? And is this a way, using some of the techniques we used here today, to do so? So now what? We're going to open it up to a little bit of discussion. So if we think about this, like, now what? You would understand your community in theory through a community ABCD lens. You might use ABCD as a lens on your extension internally and externally. You can be intentional about engaging members of the community. And I would say when we looked at those ways to engage the community, those are things, meaning those squares and triangles we looked at before, that you do long before you have a grant or long before you have something that has to have deliverables. That can be a process that's built into your extension and how you're listening and how you're engaging on an annual basis, every other quarter, however you do that. But it doesn't need to be driven by a grant. It needs to be driven by continually creating a culture where your extension wants to truly be in conversation with your community. And then to reflect, to always take time to reflect on how you're engaging your stakeholders, not just on how you as your extension may feel that you engage your stakeholders, but really in getting that feedback in a very candid way from your community members. So I want to pause now, and I'm going to turn it back to Bethany to help me a little bit here. I want you to really think about what points stand out to you. And this is a moment to say, okay, Hunter, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I can't use this. That's okay. All is welcome. But what is it that stands out for you? What is it out of all these concepts that feels like, yeah, I can do that, or yeah, that makes sense, or no, that's not doable. So with that, can we open up the chat and get some responses from folks about these concepts and what do they look like, and are they realistic when you think about your own, where you are?
Yeah, so I just posted the question in the chat. So I'll read out some of the responses when they start coming through. So someone said, take more time to listen to the variety of voices and communities. Gifts I can offer is a conversation to get the conversation flowing. More options involving my community. Take some time to understand our assets and opportunities to facilitate more collaboration. Form an advisory group to be co-designers of our evaluation, compensate them. Talk more about ABCD and our needs assessment trainings. Someone's thinking about how the community engagement spectrum can be used during staff retreat to move into empowering volunteers. Asset mapping for 4-H adult advisory committees. Advisory committee planning, the ABCD. Gather perspectives from a wide array of people and groups. Then asking for feedback and in general socialize with the community. Someone mentioned the triangle visualization. And someone said go to leadership with these ideas that you have that they could share and see how they can integrate those. Someone talked about the gifts. Yep, so 2 people mentioned the gift slide. Someone said the community engagement spectrum. See a lot of those. Gifts I can offer. Yep. So yeah, I think that's some good feedback.
Good. So they've slowed down a little bit.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Those are fabulous. And I think one of the things that, as you think about this, I have a fun graphic. I'm not going to share it here today because, teaser, if you want more information. But there is, as you think about this process, right? ABCD is an ongoing thing. It is a way you think about the work. It's intentionality about, this graphic here was intentional, right? If we have it being our compass moving forward, we might always start anything we do in extension with thinking about the gifts, thinking about those 5 gifts, and what's a way that we can focus on the individuals around us in our community and think about why they are or they are not engaging. And if we tapped into their gifts, would they engage in a different way? And then to think about kitchen table conversations. Those places and spaces where we can meet people where they are. It may or may not be our extension offices. It might be in their community, wherever that is. And just listening. to what they have to say, what their views are, what their perspectives are. And when it makes sense to have forums and opportunities where people come together, think those big sticky charts and places where people can come together and see each other's ideas and begin to connect that and feel a sense of empowerment through those conversations. And as those assets connect, providing resources, providing linkages, providing opportunities for people to discuss and partner and build on what they have and add what they don't. And then continuing to connect. See what happens out of these processes of people working together in different ways, and stand beside our communities in ways that we as institutions, meaning extension, can bring the best of what Extension has to offer alongside our communities to do more. And that is an ever-evolving circle. So as we think about that proverbial compass in front of us, may we always think about the ways that we are listening intentionally, we're having dialogue and conversations that are focused on people's gifts and what they're really passionate about. We're connecting them with others in the community, and we're standing beside them and bringing the best of Extension alongside them so they can do more. And as we're doing that, it's magical and it's fun. And nothing about this process is clean and pretty. The joy of community development in Extension is that it's like a bunch of paintbrushes that all put the paint on the wall at the same time. It's not clean. It's not always about inside the lines. It's messy, but it's beautiful. And it's about bringing people to the table in different kinds of ways. And so with that, I will pause for any questions, or I'll end rather, or conclude or open up questions, or however you want to say that, for anything else that you might be wondering about when it comes to thinking about really leveraging the strengths of our community in ways that we can do more through Extension.
Thank you, Hunter. At this time, we're going to open up the floor for questions. At this time, I don't see any questions. So, Emily, how many minutes are we going to give to?
We have a few minutes. I'd like to maybe, I think we got one, but Hunter, let me ask you a question if that's okay, as we maybe wait for people to kind of brainstorm. When you're applying this to the FCS program, which I think is a great partnership, how did you kind of get the buy-in, and how long did it take you to kind of get people on board with this process? Because I think it's really cool that you were able to apply this to a different area outside of community development and still use those principles. What were the sort of agent reactions, just based on your experience? Because I know you have a lot of relationships with those folks in those counties that you're working closely with.
Now, that's a great question, Emily. And I think one of the things about, we have just some absolutely phenomenal agents that were part of this. We have great agents across Arkansas. But when we think about the 6 who did this, for some, it was a little hard in the beginning, because it's often we recruit some of the similar people that we recruit in our programs. And when you use this approach in our communities, if we haven't used it before, it's not like you put down the door and everybody comes running. It takes a lot of one-on-one going out and reaching to different people and showing that we're for real, right? That we really do want different people in the door with Extension. And we're not looking for the same folks that we've always garnered in our communities. And I think that for some of our agents, they were completely open to it. But it's also, as they said at the time, we have our ways that we traditionally do it. And so I think it just takes time. We did this over the course of 2 years. And, as we think about that 2-year period, and everything associated with that 2-year period, the first 6 months was just giving ourselves plenty of time to talk about the model, talk through it, try it on for size. We went directly into the community. We spent time alongside our agents with with community members, but we also let our agents lead in every way. And so we were behind the scenes supporting our agents and modeling ABCD with them. And our agents now, when they talk about it and they describe this, we had a session recently with fellow family consumer science agents where those who participated talked about their experience. And some of the quotes some of the things they said was, this has really changed how I reach out and I think about engaging folks in our programs. It's helped me to be intentional about really thinking about who's not at the table and why, and how can I engage them. And so in some cases, it might be the parent at a local school that didn't feel like extension was for them, and now they feel like it is. Or in one county, our agent there has done a phenomenal job of engaging the nonprofit sector. And there's a team of nonprofit leaders who are the health and wellness ambassadors, health ambassadors, and they are just doing tremendous things that connect with what they were already doing in their work, but now it's with extension. And that's happening in different ways all across the board. And it's taken time. ABCD is not a quick fix. It's not a quick approach. It's a time-based, relationship-based strategy.
Thank you, Hunter. Okay, speaking of ABCD, we have the first question. Where can I get more information or training on ABCD?
That's a great question. So actually, the Asset-Based Community Development Institute in DePaul University offers regular 101 trainings that are available. You can go to their website for more information. You're also welcome. I think I stopped my slides before I put my contact us slide up there, but I can put that back up there. If I can be of service and support, I do training for extensions in different ways. I've done this for Florida Extension and for others specifically in extension language. And I'm a steward for the ABCD Institute as well. So if that can be of help in any way, you always can reach out to me. There's also several other resources that have great information about asset-based community development, and that's the Yeater Institute out of Australia, the Coady Institute out of Canada, Nova Scotia, and there's just some really good resources in each of those places. And so be happy to, I think those are going up somewhere in the chat. Yeah, thank you, Arminta. So those are great, or Emily or whoever just did that. They're great resources that you can look into each of those places, and they've got some examples of how asset-based community development is used.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question is, in your observation, do people need advanced qualitative data analysis? I'm sorry. Can't talk today, skills to adopt ABCD model to extension needs assessment?
No. However, I would challenge the word needs assessment. I understand that that's the way we use that is to very traditional form. If you're using asset-based community development as a lens, you might let that be an opportunity assessment. Because part of the way that we think about ABCD is we don't focus on the needs, we focus on the opportunities. And we still get to the needs, but we do it through a lens of positivity rather than negative. So if you think about, you're going to ask someone about their community and you have potholes in the community. You could say, we have terrible potholes. Every day someone's getting a flat tire, blah, blah, blah. That's taking you down a very negative lens, right? Versus, yes, we have potholes in the community. We also have a neighbor who likes to put plants out on Monday. And then John down the street likes to water those plants. And so you think about the things that, yes, the potholes aren't going away tomorrow, but what are the things that you can do to make the community a better place and still address the potholes? So it's not just about the negativity. And I think when you think about it, the reason I use ABCD in extension is because it doesn't require an advanced degree and it doesn't require qualitative training. It's really about, it's fairly basic in the sense of we build on the strengths, we gather people's opinions, we genuinely listen. And when we're working in the community and bringing people into extension, sometimes we can very, very academic in our approach, which we should because we're an academic institution. But when we're bringing people into the community and we're being the community as our classroom, we have to find ways to reach the community in very ways that meet people where they are. And so, no, short answer, you don't have to have qualitative training to do this. It's really about going back to those principles of focusing on what's strong and then using some different ABC tools and techniques that apply that lens.
Okay, thank you, Hunter. Okay, we have time for one more question. And Marissa wants to know, are there any tips for communities that have trust with government and university actors? And two, communities that culturally are shy and do not openly share these kind of feelings?
Yeah, absolutely. So is that have trust or do not have trust?
That do not openly share these, so do not have trust.
Okay, do not have trust. So, I mean, I think that's where it really becomes one of the things about asset-based community development is that it is not necessarily those of us in Extension that are sometimes having the community conversations. So I'm going to go back to my Arkansas example. We have an ambassador who is part of a church community, a church we had not been able to reach, a church that maybe think of a part of the community that had a very strong African-American part of the community that maybe was not as engaged. And so that pastor, that person, they're the ones doing the listening, not necessarily the extension agent, but that pastor, that volunteer is providing that feedback in ways that strengthen the work. So the thing about ABCD is you think about connectors. It's called connectors is the term. And you think of a connector as someone who knows a lot of people in a particular aspect of the community. And it may be the person that you don't think it is. It might be the person on the side of the street that's even holding the homeless sign, right? They probably know a lot more people than you do. And how do you think about those unusual suspects as ways that they can engage and they can help you gather information? So it doesn't always have to be you in an ABCD approach. And I think when you think about a community that doesn't have trust or doesn't feel comfortable, you might think about engaging or hiring someone from a community that might not be represented well in Extension. How can you be intentional about having someone from a community? Maybe it's being intentional about serving your Hispanic population with someone who is from the Hispanic community and from that local community. So it's about the trust being somebody other than you sometimes who has the trust and that can build those relationships.
I'm gonna take it from here, and there are a few questions we didn't get to. Thank you so much, Arminta, for moderating, and thank you so much, Hunter, for your amazing presentation, and everyone for participating, sharing your insights, and asking questions. We'd love for you all to, review the resources that we posted in the chat. We're also going to be sharing these things out in various ways. In one way, we'll be posting it on the NEPSDP webinar archive page with all the resources, slides, recordings, and answers to any questions that we didn't get to today in an FAQ style.